readers, it's Sasha, and today I am going to be doing my very controversial August wrap-up. So I ended up reading a total of 13 books this month, and then I DNF'd one pretty popular booktube favorite book at the end of this month. So let's dive in. This is going to be an interesting video. So the first book that I read in the month of August was Divergent by Veronica Roth, and I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I loved being back in the world. I thought it was so much fun to just be back and exploring the factions and exploring the different characters, and I had a lot of nostalgic fun reading this, and I really appreciated that. But I didn't love the characters as much as I thought I did, or as much as I remembered loving them, because honestly they were kind of toxic toward each other and they just didn't mesh very well together, especially the two main characters, the two love interests. So I didn't love that aspect of it, which is why I couldn't give it a 5-star again. But this was such a great start to my month because I got to reread this and I had just so much fun reading it. So the next book that I ended up reading in the month of August was Insurgent by Veronica Roth, and this was a 3.5 out of 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed the second half of this book. It kind of made me more excited to read the third book, even though I knew what happened in the third book, but there was just so much that I forgot, and so it was definitely really fun to read it toward the end. However, at the beginning of this book, it was so slow. It just dragged on and on and on, and if I hadn't been reading this for a vlog where I had like a time pressure, I don't think I would have finished this as quickly as I did because it was so slow, and I remember just reading it and I was like, but yeah, I just didn't love it. The third book I read in the month of August was Allegiant by Veronica Roth. This is the conclusion to the Divergent trilogy, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I liked the way that Veronica Roth chose to end this. I enjoyed the risks that she chose to take. I thought it was interesting. As a much older reader now, like the second time me reading it, I really enjoyed the way this book set up the ending. However, I didn't love the way the ending panned out. I enjoyed what happened. I'm glad that what happened. I just wish it happened in a different way. And this also is very heavily based on science and genes and a bunch of stuff that I don't know anything about. My brain is not, it doesn't do the science. So yes, I really enjoyed this as a series. I thought the series was really well done, and I'm glad I read it. So the next book that I ended up picking up this month was Agnes at the End of the World by Kelly McWilliams, and this is essentially a book about a girl who was born into a religious cult, and her brother desperately needs medicine for his diabetes, so she leaves the cult, goes outside the wall, and gets medicine from these two outsiders. And then she meets them, and they have told her that there is a viral pandemic that is sweeping out the nation and that she needs to be careful, all this stuff. I ultimately really liked this story at first. This was a 3.5 out of 5 stars for me. Ultimately, I loved the concept. I thought the concept was really interesting. I have a fascination with cults and cult-like groups, and I love reading about this specific cult. It was definitely very interesting. The writing in this book is beautiful, is stunning. The way that she paints pictures was truly incredible, and I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it because I feel like I could picture 90% of what was going on in my head, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. However, it just felt like she took on so much with this story, and it would have worked so much better as a series, as a duology, anything, but not just a standalone, because there's too much and not enough of what we were given ended up getting resolved in a very productive way. And there were so many different talks on religious fundamentalism and feminist principles that I feel like could have been explored so much better, and I just felt let down about halfway through. I think it was part 3 going into the rest of the book. I felt let down, but it was definitely really good, and I really did enjoy it, and I do recommend it. And yes, the next thing I read this month was These Vengeful Hearts by Catherine Lauren. This book, I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's essentially basically just about this girl who wants to be part of this secret society at her school because this secret society ended up making her sister paralyzed in an accident, and she wants to join so that she can destroy the team, the group, the society, whatever, from the inside out. It was really good. It was really fun. It was a great story. It's not like it was original because it's not original in any way. It's very Pretty Little Liars-esque, but it worked for me, and I really liked it because I could picture it all happening in my head, and I could picture it like it was a movie, and I think that's what makes an experience more enjoyable for me. So I really enjoyed that. This book did explore morality in a really interesting way, and I feel like it got a lot deeper than I was expecting it to get. I will say it does follow the very stereotypical formulaic YA book. There are a lot of tropes that are overused, I guess I should say, but I think it worked for me. It was exactly what I needed, and I read it pretty much in a day. and that's how fun it was. So the next book that I ended up reading this month was Now Is Everything by Amy Giles, and this is about a girl named Hadley whose father severely abuses her and her younger sister, and essentially she is just, things start to happen to her outside of her family life, and she starts to go through this journey of discovery and self-realization, and it is powerful. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I feel like I couldn't give it anything less, just given the way that it made me feel. I hadn't really read anything like this before. A lot of the contemporaries I used to read before coming to booktube were very light and fluffy, and they didn't really explore a lot of hard-hitting sociological topics, and this was definitely the hardest-hitting contemporary I've read in my entire life. But I loved how hard-hitting this was, and I love how it just hit you right where it was supposed to. And I enjoy that Amy Giles didn't hold back from anything, because I feel like if she had, it might have taken away from the atmosphere of the story. I will just say, like, keep in mind there are a lot of hard-hitting topics in here. There are content warnings for suicide attempt, self-harm, abuse, psychological, physical, emotional, and there's probably more, but I'm drawing a blank. But I would just go into this knowing that, and I would look up some trigger warnings, read some reviews on Goodreads, see what other people are saying, so that you know for sure you can read this. Because if you can, I highly suggest it, but if you can't, don't pick it up, because I'm sure there are several other books that explore the same types of topics but have less detail. Next, I ended up reading The Fans of the Impossible Life by Kate Skelsa. This book I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. It is about a group of friends, so these 3 people, all 3 of them are going through their own shit, and essentially it's just about all 3 of them coming together and being friends with each other and helping each other through their problems. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great friendship story. I liked what each character brought to the other characters. I liked the chaos that they brought each other, but in the best possible way. All 3 of them just brought each other out of their comfort zones, and I really liked that. Even though at times it didn't always work, but I really did enjoy it. The only reason I didn't give this as a 5-star is because ultimately I didn't like the ending. I thought the ending felt so unresolved. I literally thought my Kindle app had malfunctioned, because I was like, there's no way there's this few pages left and so little has been resolved. And it hadn't malfunctioned. She just chose not to resolve anything, which kind of bothered me a little bit, because I needed a little bit more. And there was also a lot of fat shaming and depression erasure and combining the two. I understand that it was necessary for one of our characters' stories, but it was hard to read, and at times like impacted me in a negative way, because I was just kind of like, I don't like that. And I couldn't in good conscience give it 5 out of 5 stars, because it did make me step back and be like, ugh. Kind of made me uncomfortable, so I didn't like that. But it was overall a pretty good story. Book 8 is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, and this is a book that I gave 4 out of 5 stars. It is essentially about these 2 characters who form a friendship over a bond that they created over this podcast. I really enjoyed this story. I had a lot of fun reading it in terms of another really good friendship story, because I love friendship stories where they don't just turn into a romance. Don't get me wrong, I love a good friends to lovers, best friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers trope. I love that. But it's sometimes just really nice and refreshing to read about a friendship, especially a friendship between 2 sexes. And all of the characters, every single one of them, I feel like I saw a little bit of myself in them, and I thought that was really fun to read about, because it's hard to read about a story when I can't relate to any of the characters. But with Radio Silence, I feel like I understood everything that was going on for all of these characters, because I feel like I also went through it, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. I didn't love the focus on the English school system, and I don't know anything about that, and I also didn't love the way they talked. And there was also a dog death that really impacted me, because I am a sucker for dogs and animals, and I don't like when they die, and this bothered me so much. But yeah, so I couldn't give it 5 stars, but it was a really, really good book, and I really recommend it. Next, I ended up reading The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis, and this book I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. This is about a girl named Alex whose sister had been murdered, and essentially she took matters into her own hands, and she kind of started getting these like violent tendencies and all that stuff. I don't really know how to describe it, but I loved this book. It was a really good story. Going into this, I had high hopes, and I don't feel like it lived up to those hopes exactly how I'd wanted it to, but it still was a really great story. Alex was a great main character. She was relatable and unrelatable in the best possible ways for a character to be. I feel like I could understand what she was going through, but I also couldn't rationalize the choices she made, and I thought that made it interesting to read about her. The relationships developed within this story were also really, really great. I thought the friendships specifically were fantastic, and I enjoyed reading about those more than the love interest aspects. I loved reading about the friendships and the friendship group, and just, it was good. It was well done. It was, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it just kind of reminded me of like my friends and like the stupid shit we do together. That's kind of what the friendship group reminded me of. There's only 3 of them, and my friendship group has 3 people, so that was fun. I also just like the way that the author was fully able to break my soul in a little over 300 pages. Like, that takes talent, because normally I don't get so invested in a story, especially a standalone, when it's not like 400 pages. What I didn't love the ending. The ending pissed me off. I was so disappointed with the ending. Oh my god. Also, there was a lot of animal death in a lot of very descriptive detail, and again, I can't do animal death. I'm a sucker for animals. I was like literally crying. So, and I also didn't love the depiction of teenage boys because it felt very unrealistic. Like, they were all described as being like these bone monsters that just had to have their dick in something at all costs. And I feel like that's just not realistic. Like, I understand teenage boys have hormones, and like so do teenage girls, but like I understand boys are a little bit like crazy in their teen years, and like puberty does something to them, but I just felt like it was a little unrealistic because I knew a lot of guys in school who weren't like that. I knew a lot of guys who were. So I feel like having a balance would have been a little bit better than just having all of the guys just be these massive pieces of shit. So didn't love that either. But ultimately, I thought this is a great book, and I'm really happy with it. And I can't wait to pass along to someone else so that it can break their soul too. The next book I ended up reading was The Last True Poets of the Sea by Julia Drake. This is a book about a girl named Violet who is sent to live with her uncle in Lyric, Maine, which is a town that her several great-grandmothers founded after she was the lone survivor off of a sea wreck. I gave this 4 to 5 stars. I thought this was a really interesting story. First of all, it's sapphic, so I was really happy about that because I don't read enough sapphic novels, and I feel like that was just really nice and a nice treat to have, especially with all of the different like boy hormones in the last book. I feel like it was nice to have a sapphic relationship in this book. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of this story as well. I live in a town by the sea, and it's not as small as Lyric, Maine was described as being, but some of the pictures that were painted and some of the things that happened, and just sometimes even though they talked, it just reminded me of where I grew up, where I'm still growing up. I honestly don't know really why it wasn't a 5-star read for me. It just didn't read like a 5 stars, and I think it was because I got an audiobook for it. I still haven't fully come around to the idea of audiobooks. Like, I'm getting better with them, obviously, but like I'm still not the biggest fan, but I actually really enjoyed it, and I do recommend reading this. For me, it didn't read like a 5-star. Next book I ended up reading was Goddess in the Machine by Laura Beth Johnson. This, oh my lord, this is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, this is about a girl named Andra who wakes up from a cryogenic sleep, cryonic, I don't know the word, 1,000 years later instead of 100 years later, and people are calling her a goddess. That's it. That's all you need to know. I loved this book. This was such a good book. I loved the setting. I thought Laura Beth Johnson put so much work into this story and into everything. The characters, especially Andra, she was relatable. She was fierce. She was strong. She was dynamic. She was everything that I needed a character to be. Plus, she was also plus size, so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I also just really liked the way that Laura Beth Johnson wrote the other characters, because there's one character, Zaid, who I don't know if I'm supposed to like or not like. Like, I still don't know. The jury's out. I went through so many different emotions and so many different feelings for Zaid. I was just like, Zaid, my bean. And then I was like, Zaid, my bitch. It took me on a journey. I didn't love that, but I loved it at the same time. I don't know what I'm talking about. I could be just rambling. The only thing I didn't love at first was the dialect, because essentially Laura Beth Johnson, she wrote English in a way that it evolved over 1,000 years, so what English had become after a certain amount of time, and I at first was like, what am I reading? I can't read this. But I really liked it. At the end, not that at the end, like about 50-ish% of the way in, I started really understanding and liking what she did, and I feel like it made a lot of sense. Next, I ended up picking up Wicked Fox by Kat Cho, and I read this for the Winers Book Club. Unfortunately, I went whale watching the day of the Winers Book Club, and I came back late, and I tried to sign on. I was on for about 3 seconds, and then my Wi-Fi cut out. So I read this book for nothing, but it was a good book. It was a good book. I liked it. I was 4 to 5 stars. It's about this girl named Mi Young who is a gumiho, which is a nine-tailed fox who feeds off the souls and energy of men. So it's very siren-esque for reference. And she ends up coming across this boy named Jihoon in the forest after she had just fed. So she ends up revealing her identity to him. And they end up forming this like slow burn friendship when there are different like evils lurking around, and it was well done. I like the different fantastical elements that were explored. I really enjoyed the shamanism. There were some goblins. There was obviously the gumiho. And after reading so many contemporaries, it was kind of nice to have a fantasy setting and fantasy creatures. So that was really fun. Ultimately, the story, I don't know, it just didn't hit 100% for me. I didn't love the relationship between Myung and Jihoon. For a lot of the story, I just felt like for a good chunk of it, it was cringy. I don't know, it didn't work for me. And I also again, I got this on audiobook and the narrator was not good. I did not like her. She mumbled so much and I was struggling so hard the entire time to stay focused on the story. So that, I think, is what brought it down to a 4. So the next 2 books are not books I liked, and I'm sorry. This one's not going to be a big deal. The next one was Unbirthday by Liz Braswell. This is an ARC I got at the very last minute from NetGalley. I requested it and I didn't hear, and then I didn't hear, and then I heard like 2 weeks before it was published because it's published on the 1st of September. Anyways, this is basically just like an Alice in Wonderland retelling that is about Alice going to save Wonderland. It's pretty much the exact premise of the live action movie, the most recent one. I didn't love it. It was very descriptive. It didn't make a lot of sense. The characters read so young, even though they were supposed to be 18. They read like they were 12 to 17, 12 to 16, and I hated it was such a bore to read. With retellings, I really like when authors take more of a risk and they change things up, they add things, they take things away, just so that I feel like I don't know what's coming. Because I love retellings and I love when authors choose to tell fairy tales over again in their own way. But this, it didn't feel like it was her own way. It felt the same as the original, and I don't know, it didn't work for me. Didn't love it. I did give it 2.5 out of 5 stars though, because I do feel like there was potential there, and I do like Liz Braswell's writing. She can definitely write a story. The last book, I DNF'd. Oh my god, guys, please don't hate me. I DNF'd Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. It's pretty much an alternate history where Donald Trump was never elected in 2016 and instead a woman from Texas was elected. And this is about her son and the Prince of England falling in love. And I loved this at first. I honestly, like, Casey McQuiston's writing is top tier, 10 out of 10. Really enjoy her writing. I was laughing. I was feeling things. I was in a good place. I was just in a really, really good place while reading it. And then I feel like this slow burn relationship ended and then I lost my interest in it. I feel like that's what happened. I'm not giving up on this story completely because ultimately I really liked the beginning, so I definitely want to give this a chance again at some point, especially because I bought it on my Kindle and it wasn't on sale. So I'm gonna try again. But I couldn't get into their relationship. I couldn't get into her writing so much halfway through. It kind of just faltered and it was so heavily political. I wasn't in the mindset to read a very political heavy story. I was in the mindset for something that was a little bit lighter and cuter. And ultimately, I feel like it is that, but you have to get through the politics to get there, and I couldn't get there this time, so I didn't finish it. I'm putting it on the back burner and I'm gonna try to pick it up at some point, probably within the next year. I'm gonna try again, new mindset, new headspace, and go into it knowing how political heavy it is, and I feel like then I will be able to fully understand it a little bit better. But yeah, that's it. Those are all the books I read. I was supposed to read another book that I did not end up finishing because I got an ARC. I was supposed to read One Was Lost by Natalie D. Richards, and unfortunately I didn't get to it. I'm sorry this is so weird and messy and like didn't make a lot of sense and wasn't very cohesive. That's what you get on this channel. And yeah, that is everything. And until next time, bye readers. Wait, no. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content twice a week. And until next time, bye readers.